I dated an insanely rich heiress. She didn't mind that I was poor. Didn't care that I had no talent or background. She would brave a snowstorm just to go to the suburbs and buy me my favorite red bean cake, just because I mentioned it. I thought that was true love, until she fell for her best friend's little brother. She threw away the gifts I gave her, only caring about flirting with him all day long. I took the hint. That very day, I stood on the rooftop of a 300-story skyscraper. As I jumped, she ran red light after red light, and climbed the building in a frenzy, but she still didn't make it in time to stop me. And yet, I woke up in the hospital, only to be told by the doctor that I had a minor concussion, and I'd completely forgotten everything about her. Chapter 1. The hottest, most sensational news in Cydia recently was none other than the Kim family's eldest daughter, Princess Sophia Kim, spending a fortune at an auction to buy a custom supercar worth over $100 million, just to make George happy. Sophia and George had been married for 7 years. Madly in love, a picture-perfect couple, admired by everyone in the city. Right now, she was sitting on the couch, having rented out the entire luxury car showroom. Watching George test drive each model, the staff waited outside while George was busy, lowering their voices as they whispered among themselves. One said, "That car Mr. Wang drove just now, isn't that the one from the news? Designed by that world-famous car designer. The look, the feel, it really is top tier." Another chimed in, "He's so lucky. How did he end up with someone like Chairwoman Kim? She's got the looks, the body, the power, and all these years, no one's even come close to touching her." Someone else added, "Not only that, Chairwoman Kim is also a total love brain. Just look at how Mr. Wang has been test driving cars for so long, and she's still giving him detailed feedback on every single one. Anyone else would have lost their patience ages ago." Then someone asked, skeptical, "Do you really think a woman can love a man this blindly?" "I don't buy it. Aren't they hitting their 7-year itch? You think they'll survive it?" As they gossiped, one daring employee saw an opportunity to get close to Sophia. He offered to bring her some water. As he approached, he accidentally twisted his ankle and fell toward her, on purpose, but just before he could touch her, Sophia's eyes narrowed, and she swiftly moved aside with clear disgust. The man fell hard to the floor, staring at his clearly predatory eyes. Sophia's gaze turned cold with revulsion. She waved at the bodyguard beside her. "Take care of it," she said. The bodyguard stepped forward immediately, dragging the men out without hesitation. Even so, Sophia still didn't feel clean. She took off her jacket and handed it to security. "Get me a new one," she said. "George will think I'm dirty and won't want to hold me." The onlookers didn't dare say a word, only bowing their heads and whispering among themselves. She really does love him to the bone. Otherwise, why humiliate herself like this? I had just stepped out of the fitting room and saw the whole scene unfold. I stood there, dazed. Yeah, Sophia's love for me was so deep. Everyone in the city knew it. She always made me feel secure. I hated the smell of alcohol. So she never drank or went to social events again, even if it meant losing billion-dollar deals. She didn't want me to be jealous. So she never looked any other men in the eye. She only had eyes for me, even if a man brushed against her by accident. She'd apologize to me anxiously, terrified that I might leave her. When the Kim family elders disapproved of us, she did everything in her power to show the world that she would never love anyone else but me. It was because of her fierce love and sincere devotion that I was willing to give up everything to be with her. But no one knew. I wasn't from this world. Years ago, I died in my original world, and was bound to a system that brought me here, Sophia's world, to resurrect in my own world. I had to win Sophia's heart. After years of carefully building our relationship, I finally became her one and only. She fell hopelessly in love with me. 7 years ago, during a kidnapping orchestrated by Sophia's rival, I was taken and used to threaten her. The demand: she had to cripple herself, or they wouldn't release me. Sophia didn't hesitate. She ruined her own legs, lost gallons of blood, and nearly died. From that day on, the beloved daughter of destiny became a paraplegic, forever bound to a wheelchair. And that was the moment my mission was declared complete. But looking at Sophia, who loved me more than life itself, I hesitated. I couldn't bring myself to leave. I couldn't let go of her. Before the system disappeared, it asked me 2 questions. 1, did I really want to stay in this world? 2, what would I do if Sophia ever betrayed me in the future? At the time, I looked at the woman who loved me so deeply, and nodded without hesitation. "I've decided to stay," I said. But I never answered the second question, because deep down, I couldn't even imagine that the woman who gave up her legs for me could ever betray me. After that day, the system vanished, never to return. Over the years, Sophia truly loved me with all her heart, putting me above everything. With love that intense. Everyone thought I should be the happiest man alive. I should be smiling. But right now, I couldn't force a smile. No matter how hard I tried. Chapter 2. Composing myself. I slowly walked out. Sophia looked up at me, and in that instant, her icy gaze melted into tenderness, eyes locked on me as if I were her entire world. We went to the restaurant we had reserved for dinner, but I couldn't shake the heaviness in my chest. Sophia thought I was upset about what had just happened and quickly apologized. George, are you mad? He didn't touch me, I swear. Please don't ignore me. I didn't respond, and her anxiety grew. She asked, what's been going on lately? Why do you seem so down all the time? Is it because I've been too busy with work to spend time with you? I'm sorry, this project is almost done. I'll have more time for you soon. I slowly lifted my eyes. Still cool and distant, I asked, Sophia, is there really nothing you want to tell me? She blinked, momentarily stunned by the sudden question. Her fingers began to fidget, an unconscious habit of hers whenever she was nervous. I noticed it immediately, but she just shook her head. She said, no, nothing. A dull ache pierced my chest, but I didn't press further. Toward the end of the meal, a waiter brought over a cake Sophia had pre-ordered and reminded me to blow out the candles and make a wish. It wasn't my birthday, but over the years we'd been together, Sophia had always gone out of her way to give me a sense of ceremony on every holiday and anniversary. As the lights dimmed and I closed my eyes to make a wish, the quiet was suddenly broken by the vibration of a phone. I opened my eyes just in time to see Sophia unlocking her screen and checking a message. In the dark restaurant, the reflective glass made the message clearly visible. It read, Sophia Gia, there's this crazy-looking woman with messy hair pounding on my door. I'm so scared. Can you come help me? Then, I saw Sophia frown deeply, her hand trembling as she held the phone. A moment later, her inner voice echoed in my ears. She was thinking, what a fragile little guy, scared over the tiniest thing. Whatever, I'll go check on him, he's so reckless anyway. My face went pale, my heart clenched painfully. No one knew this, but before the system vanished, it left me with one final ability. I could hear Sophia's thoughts. All these years, her mind had always been full of nothing but me. But 3 months ago, a new name started popping up in her thoughts, Makoto. He was her best friend's younger brother, just out of college. And she had recently arranged for him to work at the Kim Corporation for training. Before I could even digest this, her thoughts echoed again. But today's our 7th anniversary. Would it be wrong to leave now? She hesitated, then the screen lit up again. Makoto had sent more messages. This time, nothing but cutesy emojis, pouting faces, tearful stickers, playful hearts. That did it. Sophia got up abruptly, closed her phone, and told me the company had an urgent matter she had to deal with. She had her assistant wheel her out in a hurry. I watched her figure fade into the distance, and felt my heart sink to the bottom of a dark abyss. I sat there, numb, shivering. All these years together, Sophia had never lied to me, but since Makoto appeared, the lies started creeping in, one after another. I had never felt this kind of panic before. I tried calling the system. I wanted to check how much Sophia still loved me, but no matter how I shouted, the system gave me no response. That's when it hit me. Ever since I chose to stay in this world, the system had completely disappeared. When I made that choice, I'd bet everything on the belief that Sophia would never betray me. But now, I wasn't so sure anymore. That night, I couldn't sleep. Halfway through, a thunderstorm suddenly rolled in. Then out of nowhere, a pair of arms wrapped tightly around my waist from behind. At some point, Sophia had come back. She must have been trying not to wake me, because her movements were so gentle. I hadn't even noticed her return. She knew how terrified I was of storms like this, so even if I was fast asleep, her body instinctively moved to protect me, murmuring in her heart, "Don't be scared, I'm here." I turned to look at her sleeping face, beautiful, soft, delicate, and once again, my thoughts spiraled. Could someone who loves me this deeply really be falling for someone else? I hugged Sophia tighter, pulling her into my arms, but in the very next second, I saw it, a patch of angry red kiss marks on her neck. Chapter 3. Early in the morning, when Sophia woke up, she realized I was no longer by her side. A sudden panic struck her heart. Without even putting on a coat, she rushed out in a hurry. After searching around, she finally found me sitting alone in the garden, staring blankly into space. Hearing movement, I slowly turned my head. It seemed Sophia had taken a fall. Usually obsessed with cleanliness, her pajamas were now stained with dirt, and her face was filled with worry and panic. Ever since I was kidnapped, Sophia had become more attached to me than ever. As long as she opened her eyes and didn't see me, she would spiral into distress. Now, seeing that I was safe and sound, she immediately rushed over and threw herself into my arms. She said, "George, please don't disappear from my sight like that again. I get so worried." She leaned on my shoulder, and I could hear the voice of her heart. Sophia was thinking. Thank God George is okay. If something happens to him again, I wouldn't be able to go on living. A chill passed through my heart. I slowly lifted my head and finally asked. The red mark on your neck, what's that about? Sophia instinctively reached up to touch the mark. She paused slightly before explaining. Probably just a mosquito bite. I gave a bitter tug at the corner of my lips. I said. It's already autumn, are there still mosquitoes? Looking into my hollow eyes, Sophia finally snapped back to reality. She said. So all this time, you've been upset because you were afraid I. She didn't finish her sentence but wrapped her arms around me tightly. She said. George, I only love you. If I ever fall for someone else, may I be struck by lightning and die without a whole body. Hearing such a tragic vow, I couldn't bear it anymore and covered her mouth. I said. Don't say that. I believe you. I looked at her, eyes firm and sincere. I said. Sophia, if one day you really fall in love with someone else, please tell me. I won't cling to you, but if you lie to me, you'll never see me again in this life. Sophia trembled involuntarily and held me even tighter. She said. No, George, you're the only one in my heart. I can't lose you, and you must never leave me. She pressed herself tightly against my chest, wanting to hear more from me, but all she could hear was that one sentence. I sighed inwardly. Maybe. I really was overthinking it, but I didn't even get to relax for a few days before Sophia brought Makoto home the very next day. Clinging to my arm casually, she explained. George, his lease ended and he hasn't found a new place yet. He'll stay with us for a few days. I promised my bestie I'd look after him. I can't just let him end up on the street. I felt a chill creeping into my bones. My eyes unconsciously landed on the luxury car behind him, an identical custom-made model to mine, except with different initials. The host at the auction had said this car was the only one in the world, which was why it fetched a price of $100 million. Now that he was driving an identical car, it meant one of them was a fake. Sophia clearly noticed as well. Her gaze darkened instantly. Makoto, however, was the first to speak up and explain. George, don't get the wrong idea. I saw the news about your car and thought it looked amazing. So I asked Sophia to help me get a knockoff just for fun. Despite his explanation, my chest still felt heavy, like a stone was pressing down on it. I could hardly breathe. And as if that wasn't enough, Makoto turned half jokingly and half seriously to Sophia and asked. Sophia, tell me honestly, does this car suit me better, or George? Sophia paused for a moment, then immediately threw herself into my arms, looked up with a smile, and said. Of course it suits George better. Makoto gave a couple of bitter chuckles, then silently lowered his head, clearly disappointed. As she leaned in my arms, I heard her inner voice again. She was thinking. Don't feel bad. In front of George, I can only say this. At that moment, I involuntarily shuddered. I looked up and happened to catch Sophia's gaze shifting to Makoto. Makoto seemed to sense the look she gave and curled his lips into a faint smile. And once again, her inner voice echoed in my ears. She was thinking. You're the one driving the genuine custom-made car. Of course, you're the one who deserves it most. Chapter 4. I felt as if struck by lightning, unable to recover for a long time. Back in the room, staring at myself in the mirror, I kept asking, was everything that just happened real? I must have misheard. How could Sophia say something like that? I could only keep telling myself, again and again, that I had misheard. In the following days, Makoto went out with Sophia almost every single day, and they returned home together just the same. He worked at Sophia's company, and it made sense for him to drive her to and from work. But every time I saw the two of them walking side by side, it felt like invisible hands were gripping my neck, choking the breath out of me. Maybe to ease my mind, Sophia always kept her distance from Makoto at home. Even her tone with him was cold and detached. But Makoto, whether intentional or not, always seemed to appear whenever Sophia and I were alone. If she watched a movie with me, Makoto would coincidentally sit nearby with a bucket of popcorn. If we had a candlelight dinner, he would accidentally show up at the same restaurant. If we went to the rooftop to watch fireworks, he'd stand behind us with a camera, claiming to be capturing the moment for us. Sophia could have easily kicked him out, yet she merely smiled and allowed his presence. I felt exhausted, utterly drained. I didn't want to be the kind of husband who constantly second-guessed his wife, but every time I saw the way they looked at each other, the pain in my chest made it impossible to speak. One night, I suddenly came down with a fever, curled up in bed. My entire body felt like it was on fire, burning hot and terrifying. Sophia was frantic. She grabbed ice packs and kept trying to cool me down, feeding me fever medicine every 10 minutes while cradling me in her arms. I was barely conscious, instinctively turning my head away when she brought the cup to my lips. Despite my resistance, Sophia didn't show the slightest impatience. She said gently, George, you'll feel better after taking the medicine. I lowered myself into her chest, listening to her steady heartbeat, struggling to open my eyes. I met her gaze, so tender, so full of affection. She said, "Take your medicine and sleep. I'll stay right here with you." With great effort, I opened my mouth and swallowed the medicine she fed me, then lay back down on the bed. She held my hand tightly, gently caressing the back of it in comfort. The room was quiet, but once again, I heard her inner voice. She thought, "Go to sleep, George. Makoto said he was in a car accident. I don't know how bad it is. I need to leave right away." In disbelief, I turned toward her, just in time to see her pulling out her phone. Back turned to me as she replied to a message. The worry and anxiety in her eyes were overflowing, but it wasn't for me. My vision blurred suddenly with tears I couldn't control. I shut my eyes quickly, not wanting her to see the redness in them. Moments later, she came over, softly calling my name a few times. Seeing I didn't respond, she let out a sigh of relief, then hurried out. In that moment, my heart felt like it was being torn apart. I opened my eyes in despair, and the tears spilled uncontrollably, like beads from a broken string. My phone, beside the pillow, lit up suddenly. I sat up and tapped the screen. It was a message from Makoto. It read, "George, check Sophia's phone. There's a surprise waiting." I turned to look at the phone she'd left on the table. A wave of unease swept through me. I knew this was his trap, but as if possessed, I still reached out and unlocked the screen. Sophia's phone password had always been my birthday, so I got in without effort. Her pinned contact on WeChat was me. The profile photo was a picture of us together. The chat wallpaper was entirely made of my photos, but within all the conversations, the name Makoto stood out like a knife to the heart. After a long hesitation, I finally opened their chat, hands trembling, and step by step, I began to uncover the truth. Chapter 5. They had only added each other on WeChat for a few months, yet the chat history was unusually long. It took me a long time just to scroll back to the very beginning. The first message was sent by Makoto when he had just added her. "Hi there, Sophia. I'm Keiko's younger brother. Please take care of me from now on." He followed up with several cutesy stickers filled with hearts. Sophia didn't reply for several days. When she finally did, her tone was cold and distant. She responded, "Stop sending stuff like that. My husband doesn't like it." Makoto sent back a pouty sticker, and then went silent. After that, he kept sending her cute, flirty stickers, but she never responded. He confessed to her on WeChat, and she simply ignored it, until one day, she unexpectedly messaged Makoto first. She wrote, "I was drunk last night. Just pretend it never happened. Name your price. Don't let George find out, or I won't forgive you." Makoto hesitated for a moment, and then sent her a nude photo of himself. He replied, "Sophia, I'm younger than George, stronger than him. You really don't like me. But if you didn't like it, why were you so seductive last night, begging me so passionately? Your body's still covered in the marks I left." If it were any other time, Sophia would have lashed out at such behavior with vicious words, but this time, she said nothing at all. From that day forward, the two of them became regular bed partners. During all those moments when Sophia left me, late to my birthday party, disappearing suddenly on our 7th anniversary, postponing our planned trip, she was always with Makoto. The night the power went out, during the minute I made a wish, she sent Makoto a picture of lingerie, teasingly asking, "Wanna see big sis wear this tonight?" And then there was that custom luxury car identical to mine. Makoto had mentioned to her more than once just how much he loved that car. He said, "Sophia, I really love that car. Please, I'm begging you, just let me drive it once." At first, she coldly refused. "Buy another one. You can pick any other model." But he wouldn't give up. He replied, "No, I want that one, the one and only in the world. George has been driving it for so long already. What's the big deal if I take it out once?" He kept bombarding her with pouting, begging, and flirty stickers. Eventually, she gave in. She said, "Stop it. I'll drive it over to you tonight." Makoto was overjoyed and sent her a picture of a drawer full of condoms. He said, "These are your reward." Sophia replied instantly, "Those aren't enough." Reading it line by line, it felt like my entire world was crumbling. I gripped the phone tightly, my face drained of all color, like I'd been struck by lightning. I felt as if my heart had been hollowed out, my entire body trembling uncontrollably. I couldn't believe it. How could I believe it? During all this time, when I waited for her to come home, when I was planning our future, when I lay peacefully sleeping, she was wrapped in the arms of another man. But this was Sophia, the woman who loved me so deeply in public, who once vowed to love me forever in private. The more I scrolled through their explicit messages, the more my heart felt like it was being torn to pieces. Suddenly, I clutched my chest. The pain was so intense, I could barely breathe. The next second, my vision went black, and I passed out completely. Chapter 6. I didn't know how long I had been unconscious. When I woke up, I was already in the hospital. As I opened my eyes and saw Sophia beside me, her face filled with worry, my heart twisted in pain again. Every word she had said to Makoto, every flirtatious message they exchanged, stabbed at my chest like blades. Grief and fury overwhelmed me. I opened my mouth, wanting to speak, but not a single word came out. The pain in my heart was suffocating. I clutched my chest tightly, my teeth grinding in despair, my face flushed bright red. Seeing me like this, Sophia froze. She panicked, hurriedly called the doctor, and held me tightly in her arms. She asked, "George, where does it hurt? Don't be scared. I'm here. I'm right here with you." Doctors rushed to gather around the bed, examining me anxiously. After a series of tests, they finally reached a conclusion. The doctor said, "Miss Kim, Mr. Wong has suffered a severe emotional trauma, and he's developed aphasia." Sophia's body stiffened, a dark gleam flickering in her eyes. She bit her lip and asked, "Who was it? Who hurt George?" Then, she called her assistant in, and declared furiously that even if they had to turn the whole city upside down, they must find whoever had caused me this pain. The assistant quickly left, and once again, the hospital room was quiet, just her and me. I was still in her arms, unresponsive to any words of comfort she offered. I just stared at her blankly, like a lifeless puppet. Sophia was frantic, holding me tightly, whispering softly again and again. She said, "George, please, what happened to you? Can't you tell me? Whoever hurt you, I'll make them pay. 10-fold, 100-fold. My brows furrowed, and I bit my lip so hard it began to bleed. The one who hurt me the most was the one I loved the most. In the days that followed, Sophia canceled all her work to stay at the hospital and take care of me, but I remained the same. No tears, no smile, no words, thinking of how I used to love the pastries from the south side of the city whenever I had no appetite. Sophia personally drove out to get them, and during that short absence, Makoto came. My current state seemed to amuse him. He smiled as he placed a bouquet of lilies on the bedside table and said smugly, "George, I brought you your favorite lilies. You must be wondering how I knew you liked lilies. Ah, well, they're my favorite too. Every time Sophia bought you flowers, she'd give me the exact same bouquet." I suddenly felt sick to my stomach, remembering the night Sophia came home with fresh flowers in her hands. I looked up at Makoto, only to see that same cocky smile on his face. He said, "George, you've been with Sophia for 7 years. No matter how much love there is, it gets dull in bed. A woman like Sophia, beautiful and driven, she likes men who are young and strong. She told me herself, compared to you, I'm better in every way." Each word was lewd and heartless, slamming into my chest like a hammer. My whole body trembled. I clenched my fists so tightly that my nails dug deep into my skin, but I didn't even notice. Makoto, still wearing that smug look, pulled out his phone, scrolled through some photos, and held the screen up in front of me. He said, "Here, George, take a look. Did Sophia ever get this wild with you behind closed doors?" I tried to look away, but my eyes betrayed me, flickering toward the screen against my will, and when I saw the tangled, naked bodies on the display, I finally couldn't hold it in anymore. I collapsed over the side of the bed, and dry heaved violently. Chapter 7. After Makoto left, I went completely berserk. I smashed everything in the hospital room into pieces. With bloodshot eyes, I threw every single object within sight violently to the ground. When Sophia pushed open the door and came in, all she saw was a room in shambles, and me, barefoot, standing in broken shards of glass, my eyes red as blood, as if facing a dire emergency. She rushed over and tried to hold me in her arms. The shattered glass had deeply embedded itself into my feet, and blood was pooling all over the floor. Yet I stood there as if I couldn't feel a thing, just staring at her blankly. Sophia had never looked so panicked. Her heart ached like it was about to shatter. She tried to hold me, but I fought her with everything I had, gripping her arms tightly. I finally broke into sobs. "I want to go home. Let me go home." After 7 days of silence, those were the first words I finally spoke. Sophia was ecstatic and held me up tightly. She said, "Okay, we'll go home. I'll take you back right now." I let go, helpless, letting the tears stream down like rain, but I no longer had a home to go back to. The home I wanted no longer existed. I had given up everything for her, and now, I didn't even have a place to rest my head. I didn't understand how I had ended up like this. Even more, I couldn't understand. We were so in love. Everything was moving smoothly toward a beautiful future. Our path was already laid out. All we had to do was keep walking to reach a happy ending. So why did she stop midway and reach for another man's hand? When we got home, Makoto was still there. He sat in the living room, looking every bit like the man of the house, using his mug, drinking the coffee he loved most. My expression darkened instantly. I trembled all over as I looked at Sophia, fighting to keep my emotions in check. Through gritted teeth, I said, "Tell him to leave now, immediately." Sophia hadn't expected such a sudden demand and seemed hesitant. Before she could even speak, I cut her off coldly. If he doesn't leave, I will. Sophia quickly grabbed me in a panic. She said, "Don't say things like that. You're the man of this house. Where else would you go?" Then she turned to Makoto and said, "George doesn't want you here. You should move out." Makoto didn't argue. He simply looked at Sophia for a moment, then turned and went upstairs. A few minutes later, he came down with his suitcase and left without another word. Only after I saw him leave with my own eyes did I go upstairs. I slammed the door shut and locked myself inside. Sophia gently knocked, her voice soft, pleading. She asked, "George, can you please talk to me? Don't bottle it all up. Haven't you always wanted to go to the Maldives? Tomorrow we'll take a private jet and stay there for a whole month, just the two of us. George, I cooked your favorite, sweet and sour ribs. Will you come out and try a bite? Just one bite." "Okay." But no matter what she said, no matter how much she begged, I didn't say a single word. I didn't respond at all. Outside the door, Sophia was frantic with worry, but her inner thoughts passed through the wall and reached me clearly. She was thinking, what's wrong with George? If he keeps starving like this, what if his body breaks down? If only he'd eat something. I'd trade a few years of my life for it. "George, are you trying to drive me mad?" Leaning against the door, I slowly slid to the floor, powerless. Why? Why, if she loved me so deeply in her heart, why would she do something so cruel, so betraying? Is it really possible for one heart to love two people at the same time? Chapter 8. A few days later, I opened the door and walked out into the courtyard to get some air. Sophia seemed to be out, and the housekeepers had already left after finishing their chores in the morning. At this moment, the entire villa was so quiet. You could hear a pin drop. I looked around at the courtyard full of lilies, and for the first time, their scent made me feel sick to my stomach. These lilies. Sophia had planted them herself for me, collecting the finest lily bulbs from all over the world. The swing set by the wall, we had built it together. She once said, "When we have a child, we'll push them on this swing together." The wooden fence had been smoothed down by craftsmen she hired, just because one night I had accidentally scraped myself against it. She told me she never wanted me to suffer even the tiniest injury. If I liked something, even the stars in the sky, she said she'd pluck them down for me. So what was real, and what was fake? Her love for me was real, her kindness was real, but her betrayal was also real. I didn't want to see another lily. I turned to leave. Just then, a car's headlights pierced through the trees in the distance. The vehicle stopped about 50 meters from the gate. Moments later, Sophia and Makoto stepped out together. She walked effortlessly, her legs, clearly no different from a normal person's. I felt like I'd been struck by lightning. When had her legs recovered? And how could I not know anything about it? I stood there, dumbfounded, watching Makoto walk up to her and intimately wrap his arm around her neck. He said, "Sophia, just stay with me a little longer." Sophia raised an eyebrow and replied, "Wasn't just now enough?" Makoto nuzzled her cheek and said, "You already know the answer to that, Sophia. Since George doesn't even leave his room these days, how about I stay the night with you?" The moment he mentioned me, Sophia's expression changed completely. She coldly pulled his arm off and spoke with a chill in her voice. She said, "Don't even think about George. I'm warning you, stay away from him from now on. If you dare let George find out about us, you know what the consequences will be." Makoto stuck out his tongue and said playfully, Got it. No need to get mad. I was just saying." Step by step, I backed away, and then fled back to my room like a coward. My head throbbed violently. I clutched at my temples. Why? Why was she doing this to me? How many things was she still hiding? I didn't understand what Sophia really wanted. She'd hidden the fact that her legs had long recovered. Was it just to keep me by her side? To make me stay completely loyal and never leave? It was because I believed in her sincerity that I chose to stay. But in the end, even that sincerity turned out to be a lie. One blow after another, one truth after another, they broke down every last wall of my defense. I was completely shattered. I regretted it. I deeply regretted falling in love with Sophia. I regretted staying in this strange world for her. My chest ached unbearably. I clutched at my heart, feeling as though I were drowning in a bottomless abyss. Just as I was about to collapse, I suddenly remembered, before the system disappeared, it had left me a parting gift. The system once said, "If the day comes when you regret it all, open this pouch." Like a madman, I rushed to the cabinet and began tearing through everything. Finally, at the very bottom shelf, I found the item the system had left behind. I opened the pouch. Inside, there was only a single line of text. "Never bet your heart against a woman. You will never win. Host. If you truly regret it, there is only one way left to go back." Chapter 9. Late at night, I went up to the rooftop alone. It was early winter, and the night wind was piercingly cold. I stood at the edge of the rooftop, looking down at the dazzling city lights. the shrinking cars and trees below, and I couldn't help but recall what the system once told me. Only by facing death can one be reborn. If I jump from here, would I return to my original world? Or vanish forever? I didn't know. All I knew was, no matter where I ended up, Sophia and I would never meet again. I pulled my phone from my pocket and dialed that number I knew by heart. The call connected quickly. Sophia's voice was as gentle as ever. She asked, "George, what's wrong?" I stared blankly into the distance, my voice light and floating. I asked, "Where are you right now?" Sophia replied softly, her words filled with concern. She said, "I'm at the office. Are you feeling better? Did you eat well today?" I curled my lips faintly, my expression still indifferent. I said, "I suddenly feel like eating that red bean cake from the suburbs." In the past, no matter how late it was, if I said I wanted something, even if she was already asleep, she would get up, go out, and bring it back to me herself. Once, it even snowed heavily in the middle of the night. She drove 3 hours through the storm just to get what I wanted. That night, my heart ached watching her hands frozen cold in mine, and I thought, for the rest of my life, it would be her and no one else. Now, on the other end of the call, Sophia paused for a moment before responding. "George, there's a lot going on at work today. I have to sleep here tonight. I can't come home. How about I buy it first thing tomorrow and bring it back to you?" But for the first time, I was unusually persistent. I said, "But I want it now." Sophia hesitated again, but still turned me down. She said, "I'm sorry, I really can't get away right now. I promise, tomorrow I'll bring you as much as you want." Right after she spoke, I heard a soft chuckle from her side. It was faint, but I instantly recognized it. It was Makoto's voice. Sophia coughed hurriedly to cover it up, but I was already bitterly smiling on this end of the line. 7 years of love, and in the end, I gave it all to the wrong person. I rubbed my temples. Then my gaze suddenly turned cold and resolute. I said, "Never mind. I don't want it anymore, not now, not ever." And with that, I hung up the phone. My eyes drifted toward the city lights before me, so bright, so vast. This wasn't my world. Once upon a time, I dreamed of a future among those lights, of one lamp glowing just for Sophia and me. But now, she had destroyed it all with her own hands. "Sophia, from this moment on, in life or in death, we will never meet again." I slowly stretched out my arms, and in the next second, a deafening crash echoed from the top of the building. The next day, suddenly, a sharp pain stabbed through Sophia's heart. She didn't know why, but a terrible sense of dread seized her. Pushing away Makoto, whose body was still covered in kiss marks, she hurriedly dressed and rushed out. Makoto followed in a wheelchair, a look of jealousy on his face. He grumbled, "Look at you, so flustered you forgot to even pretend. I really envy George. To get him to marry you, you went as far as pretending to be disabled. When will I ever matter to you that much?" Sophia's lips pressed into a thin line. Any other time, she might have comforted him, but all she could think about now was that strange phone call from me last night. The anxiety in her heart grew heavier. She had no energy to care about his feelings. She coldly took the wheelchair and got in the car, heading straight for the pastry shop in the suburbs. After buying my favorite red bean cake, she rushed home. Opening the door, she couldn't help but call out my name. "George, I brought your favorite red bean cake." But after calling a few times, there was no response, until she pushed open the bedroom door, and froze at the sight before her. The entire floor was littered with paper. She bent down and picked one up. They were all chat logs between her and Makoto, and explicit photos of them in bed. In that instant, she felt as if lightning had struck her. Who put these here? George. He knows. It was like someone had taken a blade and carved into her heart. Fumbling through her pocket, she found her phone and dialed his number with trembling hands, but the line was already powered off. Panic completely overtook her. She didn't dare imagine what George had done, what he might have felt. She dialed the number over and over, like a madwoman, only to hear the same dead tone each time. Just then, a call came in. She picked it up without even checking the number, her voice desperate, pleading, "George, don't leave me. I can explain." But the person on the other end paused briefly, and then spoke. "Chairwoman Kim, please accept our condolences. Mr. Wong fell from the rooftop last night. He has been confirmed dead. Please come to the morgue to identify the body." Chapter 10. The woman on the other end of the line went silent for a moment, then let out a soft laugh. She said, "George is just throwing a tantrum, isn't he? You're in on it together to scare me, right? Put him on the phone." Sophia spoke seriously. "George, are you listening? I'm sorry. Okay, but you can't use something like this to trick me, all right?" Miss Kim, the staff member sounded unsure. Having worked at the funeral home for many years, he'd seen plenty of grieving families who couldn't accept the loss of a loved one, but Sophia's reaction clearly went beyond anything he was equipped to handle. He tried to offer what little comfort he could. Please, you should come in person. Just search for the city funeral home, someone will help you, Sophia asked. Who the hell are you? She hadn't heard George's voice, and her tone began to grow irritated. She snapped. Are you trying to scam me for money? If it's a kidnapping, at least put George on the phone. I want to hear his voice. Seeing that there was no reasoning with her, the staff member sighed and said, Miss Kim, if you come here, you'll see Mr. Wang yourself. Then he hung up. He let out a long sigh and turned to the mortician beside him. Clean up Mr. Wang's body a little. When she gets here, we'll have our hands full, and get security. Better be safe. Staring at the phone in her hand, the one that had just gone dead with a cold click, Sophia let out an abrupt laugh. She murmured to herself, what a clumsy lie. George, you're really so dumb. So dumb you'd come up with this kind of trick to scare me, right? But a dull, gray fog had settled over her mind. The sounds of the outside world could barely reach her anymore. She stood frozen for a long time. The phone in her hand creaked under her tightening grip. Sophia whispered, when I find you, I'll apologize. Okay, I'm sorry, but you can't use something like this to frighten me. Her eyes began to redden. Bloodshot veins crept into her gaze. Somehow, in a haze, she found herself in front of the flower shop. The shop owner, long familiar with her, greeted her warmly. Miss Kim, back again to buy flowers for your husband. We just got a fresh batch of premium lilies today. Want some? Yes, Sophia replied. He likes big bouquets. Please arrange a large one for me. The shopkeeper worked efficiently and quickly handed her the bouquet. He said, Mr. Wang is really a lucky man. Is it a special occasion today? Sophia tugged at the corner of her lips, her smile stiff and forced. I'm going to apologize to him, she said. I made him angry. The shopkeeper chuckled. Oh, is that all? Don't worry. Once he sees this bouquet, he'll definitely forgive you. Take care, Miss Kim. She swiped her card, perhaps without looking at the total, or perhaps not caring at all. She ended up paying over 10,000 yuan. When the shopkeeper saw the notification, he ran after her in a panic. Miss Kim, he called, but she was already slowly walking away. Not hearing a word, he sighed and shook his head helplessly. Guess I'll just credit it to her account. After all, Miss Kim always came here to buy flowers for the men she loved. Sophia walked nearly a kilometer before realizing how much attention she was drawing. People on the street were subtly pulling out their phones to take pictures. Such a stunning woman, holding a huge bouquet of flowers. It was a sight that made people envious. She had forgotten to drive. The chauffeur had the day off, so she raised her hand to hail a cab. The driver chuckled as she got in. Where to? Miss, you look like you're on your way to a wedding. Sophia, lost in thought, replied softly. To the city funeral home. I'm going to apologize. Chapter 11. The driver's face changed instantly. He cleared his throat awkwardly and said, My condolences, miss. Please, don't grieve too much. George isn't dead, Sophia thought, but she didn't bother explaining to anyone. She simply gave the driver a smile. Traffic was heavy on the way. She dialed George's number again. She wanted to hear his scolding, even if he slapped her, even if he filed for divorce. Sophia wasn't afraid. She would spend the rest of her life repenting, telling him again and again how truly sorry she was. George was soft-hearted. Eventually, he'd forgive her. She believed that. He could never stand to see her hurt. 1,000 ways to win him back spun through her mind, and with them came a faint sense of renewed hope. The lilies in her arms released a gentle, sweet fragrance. There has to be a way, she thought. The city funeral home was large and filled with the dry, mechanical heat of boiler systems. As she stepped out of the car, a flicker of pain passed through her eyes. George loved cleanliness. She remembered all these little things. And now, because of her mistakes, George had ended up in a place like this. In the end, who was really being punished? Idiot, she whispered to herself. Can't even find a more believable lie or a more comfortable place to fake it in. George loved her face too much to throw himself off a building. He wouldn't. He couldn't. She fought off the rising dread in her chest, forced herself to take a step forward. Then she overheard two workers in black uniforms whispering ahead. I really wish people who want to commit suicide wouldn't jump from buildings. It's the hardest to deal with. The bones were all shattered. Back of the skull, there's a hole the size of a fist. The brain matter was almost gone. Sophia's heart trembled. Such a gruesome way to die. George really went this far, just to scare her. Another worker said. There was only one jumper brought in these past couple of days. Right, what was his name again? Oh, the rich lady's husband. Sophia something. The guy's name was George, I think. Had all that money and still chose to die. I don't get it. Sophia stared at them blankly, then suddenly felt a laugh bubble up in her throat. So George even got the staff involved in his little act. He'd really planned it thoroughly. But, can you please stop now? She thought silently. She was really scared now. If this was George's way of punishing her, then he'd won completely. Chairwoman Kim. A breathless staff member ran over. His voice was familiar. He stopped in front of her and said, "Please, come with me." Sophia asked, "Where's George?" Her voice was airy, like she was walking on clouds. Nothing felt real. "I brought him so many flowers, he'll like them, I'm sure." "Yes, I'll take you to him," the staff member said. A flicker of pity crossed his face. "This way, please." She followed behind him, entering the inner corridor of the funeral home. The buzzing machinery and occasional crackles filled her ears. For the first time, curiosity overtook her anxiety. She asked, "What's that sound?" The staff member, used to it, didn't react at first. After a while, he replied, "Oh, it's the cremation chamber, the furnace." "Thank you," Sophia whispered. She was getting colder and colder. The staff member breathed out a bit of mist from the cold air. He apologized. "We can't raise the temperature in the morgue, not even in summer. Otherwise, the bodies will decompose." "I hope you understand," Sophia replied softly. "What corpse? I don't want to see a corpse. I want to see George." Chapter 12. "All right, please come this way." At last, Sophia saw him. George lay on a narrow bed. His face was pale, but peaceful. He looked as if he were sleeping deeply. The footsteps of the morticians, the humming of the cold storage units, none of it seemed to disturb him in the slightest. Sophia stood still, staring at him for a long while, before softly saying, "George." He didn't respond. She frowned, a flicker of confusion in her eyes. "George, stop messing around," she said again. "I know I was wrong. Okay, but isn't this kind of thing unlucky? Don't punish me like this, please." Her voice was as soft as a whisper, as if afraid to wake someone from a dream. The staff member stepped back out of sympathy and spoke quietly. "Chairwoman Kim, the police have already investigated. They tried to reach you yesterday but couldn't get through." Mr. Wong jumped from the rooftop. "The surveillance footage is complete. There's no sign of foul play. He took his own life. My condolences." But Sophia didn't seem to hear any of it. She gently set the bouquet of flowers aside and knelt down beside that low, narrow bed. "George, please wake up," she pleaded. "Don't scare me like this. I really know I was wrong." Tears fell from the corners of her eyes, landing on the carefully prepared features of the men she loved. "Look at me," she whispered. "Just open your eyes and look at me." Her trembling hand reached for his cold, lifeless face. Her expression was vacant, like she couldn't comprehend the reality in front of her. She called his name again, and again, unable to bear the sight. The staff quietly stepped out with the mortician. Outside, they spoke in hushed tones. "They always said Chairwoman Kim loved her husband deeply. Looks like it was true." "Yeah, she still can't accept he's gone." "I mean, why would someone like him jump off a building?" Another replied. "I don't know. If I had a wife like that and all that money, I'd never want to die." But her voice calling for George didn't stop. Even after her throat turned dry, even after it began to bleed, she remained kneeling on the cold ground, still whispering his name. When her voice became little more than a raspy breath, she stared at the body quietly. The tear stains on her face had long since dried. "You lied to me," she murmured. "George, how could you bear to leave me like this?" She leaned down and placed a kiss, soft, barely there, on his lips. She tasted the salt of her own tears. Dizzy and light-headed, she stood up. The staff returned, speaking gently. "Miss Kim, have you decided what to do?" "I'll cover the costs," she said, her voice so hoarse it was barely audible. "I'll have a car sent to bring him home." "Understood. Miss Kim, please accept our condolences." Why did everyone keep saying that? Sophia wondered. Her George was just throwing a tantrum. She would take him home. She would coax him, gently, patiently. One day, he would forgive her. The morticians had prepared the body, covered with a white cloth and loaded into the vehicle. George didn't look much different from a sleeping man. Sophia sat beside him, holding his hand. She whispered, "George, I'm taking you home. Be angry, sulk all you want. Just don't leave me, okay?" Chapter 13. News of George's death didn't spread until nearly a week after he jumped, because during that time, Sophia seemed completely normal. She still went to the office on time, still attended countless galas and business dinners, and whenever someone asked about George, she would smile helplessly and say, "I made a mistake. George is mad at me. We're in a bit of a spat." People would chuckle in understanding, often teasing her. After a few drinks, she'd glance at her watch and excuse herself politely. "I should head home. You know how it is, an angry husband has even less patience for a late wife." They'd laugh kindly and say, "Hurry and win him back. It's been a while since we last saw George." So when the news broke, everyone was stunned. People whispered, "A week ago. Am I remembering wrong?" She told me just yesterday that she was going home to be with her husband. Someone else chimed in. I swear I saw her texting him in between meetings. She was smiling so sweetly. Was it all an act? Another voice joined in. How do you even know the husband she was texting was the one at home? Someone objected. Come on, don't jump to nasty conclusions. Sophia doesn't seem like the cheating type. The speculation swirled in every direction, but Sophia seemed entirely unfazed. By the time she returned home, night had already fallen. She let out a small sigh. She was late. George would be mad at her again. Still, there was a sweet curve at the corner of her lips, just as she pressed her finger to the door's biometric lock. Someone suddenly hugged her from behind, arms circling her waist, a face pressed to her back. Sophia, a pitiful voice murmured. Why haven't you come looking for me? Startled, Sophia instinctively shoved the person away. Her voice turned cold. Who told you to come here? Sophia, Makoto bit his lip, eyes glistening with tears. I know you're hurting right now. I just wanted to keep you company. Isn't that okay? Get out. Sophia's voice snapped like a whip. You want to ruin everything for me, she hissed. Makoto, if George gets even more upset because of you, I swear I won't let you off. Get out, Sophia. Makoto screamed as she shoved him down the stairs. His eyes welled up with tears as he choked. No one wanted George to die like that. Please, don't be like this. Let me take his place. I'll be here for you. But all he got in return was the sudden drop in Sophia's gaze. She stepped closer, slowly, inch by inch, as if to kiss him, but the chill in her eyes made his spine stiffen. A flash of cold steel, scissors pressed against his throat. Her voice was soft, almost gentle. Get out. If I see you again, I'll kill you. A line of blood opened on his neck. Makoto screamed in pain, but Sophia didn't even look back. She turned and walked into the house, leaving him frozen, stunned, and utterly disbelieving. When news of George's death reached Makoto, his so-called friends joked that he finally had his chance to rise. Someone even messaged him, is the husband Sophia always rushes home to see, actually you now? Makoto, of course, hadn't been with Sophia, and the fear that she had already found someone else drove him to her door without a second thought, whether intentional or not. Sophia had forgotten to close the door behind her. Makoto stood at the entrance, staring into the dark, empty living room. A slow-burning anger took root in his chest. Did Sophia already have someone new? After all that talk about loving George so deeply, grimacing, he pushed himself up from the steps. His leather shoes clacked against the stairs as he followed her inside. Chapter 14. The house was pitch black inside, and the air conditioning was set far too low. It felt like stepping into a freezer. Makoto stepped in cautiously, whispering Sophia's name, but no one responded. The large villa, once full of life, was now hollow and echoing. The maids who used to serve George were nowhere to be seen. Only the sound of his own footsteps accompanied him. He heard the faint sound of soft footsteps and instinctively looked up, only to see Sophia walking quickly in one direction, not even turning her head. Sophia, he called out. But she didn't stop. He had no choice but to follow her in quick steps. There was something unnaturally cold about this villa. He tried to brush it off, telling himself it was just the overpowered air conditioning. Rubbing his arms and cheeks, he followed the path to the innermost room in the house, the master bedroom, where Sophia and George used to sleep. Makoto had been there a few times before. He knew this was where they once held each other, where they whispered and touched and made love. He used to glare at the door with hate in his eyes, wishing George would just drop dead. And now that he truly was dead, Makoto hesitated. Did Sophia know it was him? That it was his manipulation that pushed George to jump? Biting his nail nervously, he suddenly heard a soft murmuring voice inside the room. Startled, he held his breath and pressed his ear against the door. It was Sophia. Her voice was incredibly gentle. She was speaking in a soft, loving tone, so quiet and broken it was hard to catch the words. But Makoto picked out fragments. George, darling, I love you. His heart skipped a beat, eyes widening in disbelief. Could it be? George wasn't dead. Was the news fake? Had the whole rooftop suicide been a lie? A trap to humiliate him? Makoto snorted coldly through his nose, then pouted and raised his hand to knock. If he could break George once, he could do it again. But what he didn't expect was that the door wasn't locked. His hand pushed forward a little too hard, and he stumbled straight inside, falling hard onto his knees with a loud thud. Ugh, he groaned, wincing in pain. He looked up, and met a pair of utterly emotionless eyes. Sophia was staring at him, as if he were some disgusting thing on the bottom of her shoe. Makoto flinched under her gaze. He instinctively looked away, and then looked beside her. He saw George, lying on the bed, body perfectly straight and still. Something felt off. Makoto stood up quickly, trying to play it cool. George, he said with a half-smile. Long time no see. George didn't respond. Makoto took a step closer, trying to wrap an arm around Sophia's shoulder like he used to, but just as he leaned in, something caught his eye. George's eyes were closed, his lips were colorless, drained of life, and though a thick layer of makeup had been applied to his face, it couldn't hide the pale, bluish undertone beneath. This was a corpse, there was no doubt. Chapter 15. Makoto's hands were trembling violently. He took a step back, his throat tightening as if an invisible hand was choking him. No sound could escape his mouth. He wanted to scream, he wanted to run, and then he understood. He finally realized why the villa had smelled faintly strange when he entered. Why the air conditioning had been turned down so low. It was to preserve the corpse, but Sophia just stood there, watching him. Her expression as calm and still as stagnant water. She spoke softly. "Makoto, you're the one who told him about the messages, weren't you?" Makoto couldn't speak. His back was pressed against the wall, shaking his head frantically as tears streamed down his face. After a long silence, he gasped for air, his voice broken and fragmented. "You're insane. He's dead, Sophia. What the hell are you doing?" Sophia's face changed in an instant. She stood up and began walking toward him, one slow step after another. Her voice was icy. "He's dead. And whose fault is that? Tell me, Makoto, was it you?" Makoto tried to flee, but his legs were too weak to hold him. It was his first time seeing a dead body up close, and the reality hit harder than he ever imagined. Sobbing, he cried, "It wasn't me. I swear it wasn't. Sophia, I was wrong. Okay, I never should have messed with you. Just bury George, please. I'm begging you. He's really dead." Sophia stopped right in front of him. She bent down, leaned close to his ear, her voice dropping low, just like the countless nights they had once shared in bed. She whispered, "I made mistakes, but so did you, and neither of us is getting off that easy." A soft laugh escaped her lips. Makoto collapsed to his knees, shaking as he looked up at her in terror. What are you going to do?" Sophia didn't answer. When she left the room, she was still holding a handful of Makoto's hair. He had struggled wildly. It had taken everything she had to subdue him. Now, she was calmly washing her hands. The strands of black hair slid into the white porcelain sink, swirled into the drain, and tangled around the silver stopper. "So dirty," Sophia murmured. "If George saw this, he'd be angry." Makoto's disappearance stirred no reaction from the outside world. He had come to the city with nothing, and survived only by clinging to Sophia like a parasite. By the time people started to notice something strange about Sophia, a full month had passed. Someone asked, "Hey, has anyone heard anything about George's funeral? Has he been buried yet?" Another replied, "Buried? She said yesterday she was bringing food home for George." Honestly, it sounded sweet at first, but now, it's kinda creepy. The conversation abruptly halted, because the woman they were talking about was approaching, phone in hand. Sophia smiled and asked, "You don't like this flavor?" She raised her eyebrows, looking genuinely surprised. "Well, I already brought it home," she said playfully. "What should I do with it?" "Fine, I'll eat it myself." Her voice was warm, affectionate, a touch exasperated, like she was teasing a spoiled lover. She looked like she was in an excellent mood. The two exchanged nervous glances. One of them mustered the courage to ask, "Miss Kim, who were you talking to on the phone?" Sophia replied with a cheerful smile, "My husband, of course. He used to say he loved this flavor. Now he doesn't like it anymore. Such a handful, isn't he?" "Haha, sounds like a sweet kind of trouble," the other person joked. Sophia nodded with a laugh, then walked away. Once she was out of sight, the two men stood frozen, exchanging a long, uneasy look. A chill crept up both their spines. Chapter 16. I'm back. Even without anyone to respond, Sophia would say these words the moment she took off her shoes. In the past, George would come out to greet her, take her coat with a warm smile, and kiss her gently. Sophia was supposed to have already gotten used to the days without him, yet at this moment, she couldn't help but feel a pang of loneliness. She set down the bag of pastries, but her eyes landed on the center of the living room. A man was kneeling there, tending to a vase of glowing white lilies on the table. His white shirt was crisp and familiar. He gave her a somewhat shy smile and said, "Sophia." For a brief second, Sophia thought she was seeing George from their newlywed days. She pressed her lips together and instinctively took a step forward, but the man shrank back, his neck recoiling. The chain on his ankle clinked in response. She froze mid-step. The man's expression changed instantly. Fear twisted his face as he threw himself at her feet. He cried out, "Sophia." Sophia crouched down and grabbed his cheek with her fingers, her brow twitching involuntarily. Her rage twisted her face, but her voice came out soft and low. She said, "How dare you?" She bit the words out one by one, teeth clenched. How dare you wear his clothes? Do you think you're worthy to be compared to him? Makoto was slapped so hard that he crashed into the corner of the coffee table. The porcelain vase holding the lilies fell and shattered with a crisp ring. Trembling, dizzy from the blow, he still scrambled to cling to Sophia's leg, wailing in desperation. Sophia, please, I beg you, let me take his place. Let me be him, please. Get out. Sophia flung him off with a near roar. You think you're worthy? What the hell are you? Give me his clothes back. Give them back. Makoto let out a scream and, shaking all over, peeled off the shirt. Naked, he curled into a ball by the sofa, sobbing uncontrollably. Sophia, I swear I know I was wrong. I really know now. Sophia said coldly. I let you stay here to keep George company, and this is what you're doing. Makoto shook his head through tears, on the verge of a breakdown. Sophia hadn't abused him physically. She gave him food and water every day, but whenever she left the house, she would lock him in the room with the cold corpse. Over these days, George had gone from lying under low-temperature air conditioning to resting inside a freezer that resembled a coffin. Every night and day, Makoto trembled at every sound in the villa, terrified out of his mind. He couldn't sleep. His eyes were bloodshot. He was close to collapse. Every moment, he feared George would crawl out of the freezer and glare at him, saying, "It was you who ruined me." Seeing the terror in his eyes, Sophia spoke softly. "Makoto, everything you did today, George saw it all." Makoto screamed. The psychological torment was unbearable. Just as his eyes rolled back, about to faint, Sophia grabbed his ear viciously and said with a laugh, "If you can't even fight back from this, Makoto, you deserve this." Something flashed through Makoto's eyes, but it was buried beneath his tear-streaked face. He pleaded, "Sophia, please just let me go. Let me go." Sophia bit her lip and said, "And who's going to let me go?" As if she suddenly found it all meaningless, she murmured to herself and turned to leave, but in a sudden motion, Makoto yanked her back. A shard of broken porcelain in his hand slashed across Sophia's throat. Blood gushed out instantly. Chapter 17. In the hospital, Luis gently patted Sophia on the shoulder and said, "It's over now. That guy Makoto's been locked up. Sigh. You've had a rough time lately." Sophia's face was pale as she quietly shook her head. She couldn't speak yet. Her neck was wrapped in thick gauze, and she looked utterly exhausted, dazed, and harmless. Luis looked at his old friend in this state and felt a pang in his heart. He tried to comfort her. "I know how much you love George, but the dead can't come back. Don't cling to the past so tightly. He wouldn't want to see you like this either." Sophia typed a message. "I'll bury him. It's just, I can't bear to let him go." Luis sighed and patted her shoulder again, saying, "I'll ask my friend to try and get Makoto a life sentence. You need to start moving on." "All right." Sophia nodded. Luis still had matters to take care of. After a few more words of advice, he left. Once the room fell silent, Sophia turned her head and stared out the window. The trees outside had turned yellow with autumn. Occasionally, a leaf would drift into the room. Even after completing what she had to do, Sophia felt hollow inside, as if there was nothing left to anchor her. It had been a full month since George's passing. She had refused to bury him, not because she didn't understand death, but because some part of her still clung to the hope that a miracle might happen. Even though she dreamed of George night after night, even though she looked at his pale, lifeless body day after day, there had been no sign of him ever coming back to life. She slowly closed her eyes. The piercing ache would strike without warning, not even allowing her peace in her shallow, broken dreams. George was dead. Everyone told her that George was dead, but Sophia still refused to believe it. In a crowd on a busy street, she saw George's back. He was smiling, laughing, talking cheerfully with another man by his side. Sophia wanted to call out to him, wanted to make him wait, but her feet were frozen in place, as if encased in concrete and steel, completely unable to move. She watched helplessly as they walked away. Then she heard the other man say, "Escaping death like that must mean you've got good fortune ahead. But George, ever since you woke up, you really do seem like a different person." George's smile faded a little. Then he replied, "Maybe because when you're that close to death, you suddenly understand a lot more." The man asked, "Not going after the girl you used to like anymore?" George shook his head. The two walked farther and farther away, leaving Sophia alone in the crowd, soaked in cold sweat. She was overwhelmed by the scene before her, when suddenly, a mechanical voice rang out. "Host, I told you you'd regret it." George replied, "Yeah, I shouldn't have overestimated anyone, but at least," the voice responded, "at least you have another chance to come back, but it comes with conditions, and a price. Can you accept that?" George replied, "Of course." Sophia jolted awake. Outside, it was a clear, crisp autumn day. She sat up, a strange certainty blooming in her heart. On her way through the hospital, she passed many nurses, doctors, and all kinds of patients. With every step she took, the things around her began to quietly dissolve, until she stood at the rooftop. The hospital's fencing wasn't easy to climb. but she rolled up her sleeves, revealing arms covered in scars. She had thought about death many times, but never did she imagine that one day, death might bring her back to George. She thought, "Was everything you said true?" She asked this in her mind. But no one answered. The wind was so strong, she swayed, unsure whether what she had just heard in her mind was a hallucination or reality. If it was real, she'd see George again. If it was fake, then she'd die from the fall. But Sophia didn't hesitate. She closed her eyes and let herself fall backward. Chapter 18. Come on, George, David pleaded pitifully. Can't you just come with me as a favor? I sighed and said, I've got class, then gave a helpless smile. How about another time? David immediately lit up. Sure, as long as you agree. Any time works. You really are my best bro. Satisfied, he gave me a pat and headed off first. I let out a breath. Honestly, I could never say no to this childhood friend of mine. It had been 3 months since I returned to my own world. Back then, I had died in a car accident and was sent to another world on a mission. But when I woke up, I found the system had altered the extent of my injuries. I only had a mild concussion. So after staying in the hospital for a few days, I was back to being 22, alive and well. Once David saw I was fully recovered, he kept bugging me to join a group blind date event with him. But I had just ended a really miserable relationship. There was no way I had the mental space to care about something like a mixer. Still, since he insisted, I eventually gave in. David showed up at the dorm right on time. I just threw on some sportswear and went out. He stared at me, speechless. You know you're handsome, but this is overkill. At least do something with your hair, man. I laughed, exasperated. I'm not here to pick up anyone. Let's just go already. All right. We headed to the KTV where it was all happening. I had no interest in this kind of childish social event, but David practically dragged me there. The moment we pushed open the private room door, I instinctively shrank behind David, awkward and hesitant. I slipped inside quietly, and soon spotted a familiar face in the crowd. I froze for a second, then quickly looked away. David leaned close and whispered, Wait, is that Willow? She's here too. Do you still like her? If you do, go for it. To be honest, I never had strong feelings for her. Back then it was just curiosity, a silly little crush. Now, thinking back on that innocent and sweet phase felt like something from another lifetime. So I simply shook my head. David gave me a look. Damn, one car crash and you're a whole new person. Huh, fine then. Want to sing a duet with me later? No thanks. I shut that down immediately. Feeling awkward, I just focused on picking at the fruit on the table, barely lifting my head. That was until a fully hyped up David leaned over and whispered, Dude, have you noticed Willow's been staring at you? I frowned. No way. I instinctively denied it, but still glanced over, and sure enough, Willow was staring at me without blinking. I was caught off guard. She immediately curved her lips into a small smile and pointed at her phone. I looked down. She had messaged me. She wrote, Feeling better. Scrolling up, I saw our old chat, or more accurately, my one-sided enthusiasm. Willow had always replied curtly and indifferently. I replied, Much better. Thanks for checking in. I took a sip of beer. She asked, Can I come over and sit next to you? This time, I was truly stunned. The old Willow couldn't even be bothered to acknowledge me. So, what the hell had changed? Chapter 19. In the end, I still turned her down. The private room was noisy as hell, and after 2 drinks, I just wanted to get some air. I slipped out quietly, standing in the hallway, sleepily scrolling through my phone, trying to think about the lab report due tomorrow. But someone was standing beside me. George, came Willow's soft voice. Are you not feeling well? I replied, No, then asked in surprise, What are you doing out here? Willow was a popular girl, never short on guys who'd come running with just a wave. Her being at a dating mixer like this, I had to admit, I was curious. She said, Too loud. Willow replied, I prefer quieter places. That was something we actually had in common. I'd had a bit of alcohol, so my guard was down. I asked, Then why'd you come here at all? You still looking for a boyfriend? I am. Willow answered bluntly. I came for you. She pulled a tiny flower from her pocket. It was small and trembling slightly in the night breeze as she handed it to me. I looked down at it, then let out a small laugh. What's this supposed to mean? She said, Someone told me you liked lilies. I went to more than a dozen flower shops but couldn't find any. They were all sold out. This is the best I could get, I said calmly. If you gave me a lily, I'd reject it. From now on, I don't like lilies anymore. Inside Willow's mind, a voice replied, See, I told you. The system fell silent for a long moment. Willow grumbled. Where the hell did you even get your data? How is it sometimes so accurate, and other times completely off? Should I even trust you anymore? What if George ends up hating me? After a long pause, the system responded. I'm sorry. I'll try to provide more accurate information from now on. Willow asked. What's your name again? The system said. Sophia. That was my name. Sophia. After waking up, Sophia found herself becoming the host of a strategy guide system. She could truly see George through Willow's eyes, but she could no longer be anything more than a system designed to teach Willow how to love George. She no longer had a body, no longer had the ability to act on her own. The only thing she had left was all the experience and memories she'd shared with George over the years. She knew what he liked to eat, what shows he watched, what kind of flowers and people he was drawn to, but she could never tell George any of it herself again. Willow and George walked back to school together. She smiled and said, I'll make sure David gets home safe. You go ahead and rest. I nodded. All right. Thanks for today. Willow smiled. No big deal. On the way back, she was still talking with the system. She said, good thing I have you guys. Otherwise, I'd probably regret this for the rest of my life. As long as I successfully win George's heart, he won't die. Right? The system replied. Yes. For some reason, Willow sensed a hint of sadness in the system's mechanical tone. It said, please continue your efforts. Host. Completing the strategy is necessary to prevent the target's death. Willow replied. Recommend me a few books he likes tonight. I want to understand him better. Understood. Host. Chapter 20. I realized. Willow seemed to be chasing after me. I had indeed once liked this girl. To others, that might have just been a few days ago, but for me, it felt like emotions from a lifetime past. I stared at the message she sent me on my phone, then silently turned off the screen. David immediately yelled. Didn't you used to like her? Why are you ignoring her now? I replied. I can't bring myself to like anyone right now. I don't want to take the risk. I was scared of offering up my heart again, only to have it crushed under someone else's foot, bleeding, broken, and ugly. This wasn't a mission world anymore. There was no strategy task I had to complete to stay alive, risking everything to chase a love as fragile as mist. That was never who I was. David had no idea what I'd been through, but when he heard that, he fell silent too. He stared at me for a while, then suddenly grew serious. George, you better take care of yourself. If you're not into her, that's fine. I'll reject her for you. I nodded. So David called Willow. He told her I wasn't in a good place right now and asked her not to keep trying to see me. The girl was quiet for a long time before she softly said, okay. Before David could hang up, she added, but I'll still wait for him. Please tell him not to feel pressured. If one day he feels like going out, I'll go with him, anywhere he wants. David rubbed his arm and shivered. She's so mushy, he muttered. Willow knew that George used to like her, so she had been taking things slow, cautiously easing into pursuit. But ever since the car accident, George's attitude had flipped a full 180. She wasn't exactly upset, just frustrated. And when she thought back on the way she used to tease and toy with George, always enjoying the sight of him chasing after her, she suddenly felt pathetic. The system had been silent for a long time. Willow frowned, feeling irritated. She let out a sigh. Can a car accident really change someone this much? She ran a hand through her hair and muttered, why is George completely different now? She had no idea how heartbroken the system inside her was. It was her, Sophia, who had turned George into this. Back when they were together, George had been full of sunshine, lively and spirited, like a wild blade of grass, growing tall and green. And now, Sophia thought, maybe this was fate, to make her watch, helplessly, as the damage she caused took root. She hesitated. Should she tell Willow the truth? But before she could say anything, Willow had already pulled herself together. She wasn't afraid of being cold-shouldered by George. What she feared more was why George had become so closed off in the first place. If he didn't want to see her, fine, she'd leave him be. Instead, she had someone deliver a book to him. It wasn't anything philosophical or deep, just a simple, cheerful children's book. Sophia blinked, surprised. She said, George doesn't like these. Willow replied, doesn't matter. She shrugged. He's been really tired lately. I just want him to feel a little happier. She didn't send the book to win points with George. She just wanted him to be okay. Sophia's chest ached. At last, she understood the difference between the two of them. Chapter 21. I didn't return the book like Sophia had expected. Instead, I spent a week slowly making my way through it, and to my own surprise, I actually messaged Willow. I asked, why this book? She replied, because I loved it as a kid. Smiling as she typed. Then she asked, what do you think? I replied, childish. Just that one word. But she laughed even harder, as if I'd just given her a compliment. Sophia, however, knew what it meant. George would never engage in such trivial conversations with someone he had zero interest in. Clearly, Willow was doing something right. The two of them chatted like that for a few days, back and forth, casual yet consistent, and gradually, Sophia began to feel lost. She had been married to George for years. She thought she knew everything about him, but now, watching the way he interacted with Willow, she realized George had sides she'd never seen before. George was a top student in class. He never replied to Willow's texts. Once, Willow sat in on one of his public lectures, quietly seated behind him. They didn't exchange a single word. Sophia couldn't help but ask, "Don't you feel like this is all pointless?" "Not at all," Willow replied. "Just being near him makes me happy." It was that kind of seemingly one-sided effort that somehow made George's affection gradually grow. Willow never asked the system how high her progress bar had climbed. Even when she occasionally got a number, she didn't show much excitement. She always said she liked George, not because of the task, but because she genuinely liked him. Maybe this was fate's punishment, Sophia thought. As long as the mission wasn't complete, she would be forced to watch as George's heart slowly opened up to someone else. They were young, bright, full of love and hope. Everything she was no longer. Maybe George had truly fallen for her back then. But Sophia knew, at the start, he had approached her with a purpose, and she had used filthy means to make him stay. Deceit and concealment were the foundation of their so-called love. Now, all of it was too faded to even hold shape. She once thought that becoming a system meant she'd stop feeling pain, that being in this world was simply a last look at George. But now, it was like drinking poison to quench thirst. Every extra glance, every added thought, only made her realize how much closer Willow was getting to him. Like on this bright, beautiful spring night, 3 months had flown by. There were no grand gestures or passionate confessions. But the space between their hearts had quietly narrowed. Willow checked the weather forecast and sent him a text. "Wanna go out for a spring walk?" George replied, "Sure." He still said little on social media, but in person, he now greeted Willow with a faint smile. It had been 2 weeks since they last met. Willow asked, "Finished your project?" George replied, "Yeah, just need to get started on my thesis now." Sophia couldn't help but say to Willow, "You'll lose your chance once he graduates. Shouldn't you be trying harder?" Willow replied, "It's okay. Travel is easy these days. I can always go see him." Ah, youth, so naive. Distance was still the widest chasm love had to cross. Sophia thought that, and yet, she couldn't stop the bitter ache rising in her chest. Chapter 22. I didn't know that deep in Willow's heart lived someone I once loved. We were strolling along a path by the riverside, flowers blooming all over the hills. I asked, "Willow, why did you always ignore me before?" Willow froze. She had known I'd ask that sooner or later, and even now, she couldn't help but feel embarrassed. She said, "Back then, a lot of classmates said you were really handsome." She spoke softly. "Smart too, but kind of cold. So when you talked to me first, I was really happy. But I was afraid I wasn't the kind of person you imagined. That once you got to know the real me, you'd think I was boring." It was rare for her to open up like that. Her cheeks flushed a faint pink from embarrassment. I turned my head to look at her. After a moment, I let out a soft laugh. "All right then, I forgive you." So Willow wasn't completely indifferent after all. Now that it was out in the open, she seemed far more at ease, walking beside me. Even her breathing became lighter. Then she asked, "What about you?" Her tone was sincere. "Why did you suddenly start talking to me again?" I said, "Someone who likes reading about chipmunks, how bad could she really be?" It was such a simple conversation. Sophia thought to herself. How long had it been since she and George talked like this? Their relationship had long been filled with tangled desires, money, status, a never-ending web of ambition and pretense. But in truth, George was just a young man, barely stepping into the real world. Sophia asked Willow in her mind, "I remember your family is pretty well off too. Won't they expect you to marry someone of equal background?" Willow responded absent-mindedly, "If anyone's out of reach, it's me. I barely made it into this university. George's intelligence is on a whole different level." Sophia realized there were still such pure thoughts and relationships in this world. Maybe the odd one out was her. She'd lived too long in a world of vanity and indulgence, and had long forgotten what it felt like to sit face to face and speak openly with someone. I noticed Willow would occasionally drift off. I'd experienced that too, back when I first entered the mission world and was constantly talking to the system. It made it hard to focus on the reality right in front of me. Was Willow also just doing a mission now? I blinked, looking up at the petals swaying in the treetops. A wave of confusion welling up inside. If opening my heart again meant getting hurt, would I still choose this path? Maybe I would, because I didn't think Willow was that kind of person. The rest of the walk, we both had our own thoughts, but on the surface, everything was calm. We ran into a few photographers carrying cameras. One of them laughed and said, Let us take a photo of you two, free of charge. Willow looked at me for confirmation. Do you want to take one? I smiled and replied, sure. So we stood side by side, politely posing. The photographer encouraged us. Come on, get closer, a bit more natural. I hesitated several times before placing my hand lightly on her shoulder. My face a little flushed. In the end, I wrapped my arm around Willow. Click, we finally had a photo together. The photographer beamed. You two look great together. Best wishes. I instinctively said. Thanks, then realized what I'd said. I turned to look at Willow. Her eyes were filled with joy. Chapter 23. The path down the mountain wasn't easy to walk. Willow reached out her hand to me several times, and each time, I took it. She looked visibly delighted. Her delicate and beautiful face glowing even more brightly. She smiled and said, "You're being really nice to me today." I asked, "Am I usually that bad?" I curled my lips slightly. "I've never treated you badly, have I?" Willow just smiled, saying nothing. But inside, her heart was churning. She called out to Sophia in her mind, "I think he's accepting me. He really is." The affection meter was at 60%. Not love yet, but definitely something. Sophia should have been happy for her, but she could only respond with silence. After a long while, she gave a faint chuckle and said, "Congratulations, host." On the way back to the dorm, Willow said, "Your birthday's coming up in 2 weeks, right?" I replied, "Yeah." I looked at her and smiled. "Are you planning to give me a gift?" "Don't tell me it's another children's book," she replied. "It's not." Willow looked at me, her eyes shining. "I want to say something to you. When the time comes." She was probably going to confess. I figured that out pretty quickly. I smiled and nodded. "But I'll be out of town next week for a competition with my advisor," I said. "Wait for me to come back." "Okay," she said. "Okay." After we parted, I returned to the dorm. David was already waiting at the door, arms crossed, raising his chin at me. "Spill it. What level are you two at now?" I said. "What level?" I tried to play dumb and walk past him, but David blocked me with one arm. I sighed. All right, I'll tell you. She's probably going to confess on my birthday," I said. David broke into a grin. "Didn't you say not long ago that you weren't interested, that you had no mood for romance?" "Damn, George, you really had me fooled," I replied. "No, it's just that Willow's really something." I lowered my eyes and smiled faintly. Even if I hadn't fully stepped out from the shadow left by the mission world, I no longer dreamed of it so often. Back then, I would see myself standing on rooftops at night, watching the cars below flow like tiny ants, feeling utterly lost. It was Willow who reminded me that I was standing on the ground now, not up high. She was the first anchor I found in this world, and after her, there was David. David clapped me excitedly on the back and urged me to do a live stream right then and there. I couldn't argue with him, so I reached into my small bag and pulled out a photo. He asked, "Who took this?" "You two look perfect together." He wasn't wrong. Under the flowering trees, the two of us looked like a picture-perfect couple. Natural smiles, bright expressions. It almost looked like something out of a magazine spread. I looked down at the photo and smiled. "Just a passerby." David laughed. "Honestly, it looks like you two are already dating. You only have one print. What about Willow?" I said. "Come on, you think we don't have digital copies?" The dorm turned into a lively mess of laughter and teasing. I laughed with them. For the first time in a long while, I felt light. Even with the upcoming competition, I didn't feel nervous anymore. Since Willow came into my life, Sophia had stopped appearing in my dreams, and for me, that was the best thing that had happened in a long, long time. Chapter 24. Willow came to see me off before the competition. We talked for a bit through the glass of the tour bus. After she left, my advisor smiled and asked, "Your girlfriend?" I replied, "Not yet." Then laughed. "Didn't expect you to be so gossipy." The advisor chuckled. "You've been single for 4 years, cut me some slack. Besides, if you two ever get married, I better get an invite to the wedding," I said. Of course, we took a 2-hour high-speed train, then transferred to a shuttle bus. Once we arrived at the hotel, we quickly divided up tasks. I couldn't stop thinking about my competition entry, so I opened my laptop again to double-check everything. It wasn't until that evening that I noticed a message from Willow. She asked, "I heard there's a major rainstorm where you are. Did it affect you?" The hotel had great soundproofing. I hadn't even noticed. When I pulled back the curtains, the wind and rain were hammering the windows violently. "Are you busy?" Willow sent another message a few hours later, sticking strictly to the promise I'd made her agree to before leaving. No clinginess, so I just called her. The video connection wasn't great, maybe because of the storm. The signal kept cutting in and out. On the other end, Willow's voice was choppy. She reminded me not to go out alone. I nodded. Just then, someone knocked on the door. I said to Willow. Probably my advisor calling me to dinner. I'll call you back later, she replied. Okay, but that follow-up call never came. Willow sat there, feeling inexplicably anxious. She checked her phone again and again. As the minutes ticked by, she grew increasingly unsettled. She asked the system, "Why isn't George replying to me? Maybe he's busy." Sophia answered curtly. Though deep down, she was uneasy too. Just wait a bit longer. Sophia had been talking much less these days. And Willow had gotten used to her silence, but her own nerves had her reaching out. For some reason, a sense of dread was creeping over her. Suddenly, Sophia cried out. Something's wrong. At the same moment, a breaking news alert popped up on Willow's phone. She normally didn't care much about these things. But something made her instinctively look. The headline read, Magnitude 7.3 earthquake hits riverfront district of City A. It felt like someone slammed a bat into the back of her head. Everything buzzed. She couldn't even hear Sophia's voice in her mind anymore. Her phone slipped from her fingers and clattered to the ground. Then she scrambled to pick it up with trembling hands. George was right in the epicenter. She didn't say a word, just staggered out of the dorm in a daze, then quickly ran back in to grab her coat, bank card, and car keys. Sophia asked, "You're going?" Her tone was serious. "Willow, there's going to be another quake in the riverfront district later tonight. It's dangerous. Think carefully." Willow shouted. "Of course I'm going," she practically roared. "Even if it's dangerous, I have to go." Sophia remained calm. "All right, I can track George's location. You know which hotel he's staying at, right? I'll guide you there." Willow didn't reply. She rushed to the garage, jumped into her car, and hit the highway. Sophia said, "Stay calm. You can't get hurt. If something happens to you, who's going to save George?" That snapped her out of it. She eased off the gas just enough to drop below the speed limit. By the time she neared City A's riverfront district, the car could go no further. Rain was still pouring down, and most of the city's buildings had collapsed. It looked like the end of the world. Willow took a few deep breaths. Her eyes were bloodshot. The GPS wasn't accurate anymore. She only had a general idea of the hotel's location. She said to Sophia, "It's your turn now. Lead me the rest of the way." Chapter 25. Sophia was panicking too, but she knew, if she lost her composure, Willow would never find George. The real system's piercing alerts were hammering into her brain. She gritted her teeth through the sharp pain and pulled up the location tracking. Sophia spoke in a broken voice. "Keep heading southwest, 15 kilometers. Thankfully, the hotel wasn't far from the edge of the highway. 15 kilometers wasn't impossible, but just one look at the devastated road ahead made Willow's tears stream uncontrollably, blending with the rain, choking back sobs, her lips trembling. She asked, "Tell me, is George still alive?" Sophia replied, "He is. His vital signs are stable." What she didn't say was that as a standard system, she had no right to keep location tracking active for this long. Right now, Sophia was enduring unbearable, sharp pain and pressure to keep feeding Willow the coordinates. But Willow didn't need to know, and neither did George. Loose debris and jagged rocks nearly tripped Willow as she ran. All around her were screams and sobs, endless and haunting. Her heart sank with fear. She couldn't even begin to imagine what George was going through in the middle of all this. Sophia spoke again. "He's all right. You can't panic. If you lose it, what's he going to do?" "Right." Willow took a deep breath. She was just a girl in her early 20s. It was her first time facing something like this. Of course she was scared. Sophia said, "You've covered 5 kilometers already. Look around, see if there's a bike nearby. Ride the rest of the way." Willow found a shared bike. Her hands trembling, she scanned the code. This stretch of road was closer to the city. Wider, yes, but also littered with more collapsed buildings. Her tears wouldn't stop. They blurred her vision so much she could hardly see where she was going. Sophia was still speaking to her in her mind. But the words had become distant and faint, as if muffled through water. They'd promised to confess once she got back, promised to celebrate his birthday together. Farther in, the bike couldn't get through anymore. She abandoned it and dashed straight into the rubble. Someone shouted behind her, "Don't go any further. Wait for rescue. Aftershocks are coming." But Willow ignored them. Head down, she sprinted toward the only place she could think of. She called out to Sophia several times, but got no response. Frowning, she asked, "Where do I go now?" Sophia. After a long pause, the voice finally answered, slower than before, "To your right. 2 kilometers. That's where his signal is." Sophia was in too much pain to speak properly. A system could help its host, yes, but that didn't mean it could use its privileges endlessly. Sophia had pushed through 2 hours of intense strain. If a soul could take physical form, hers would be battered and bloodied by now. But her heart was clear. She was glad she could help Willow, because helping Willow meant helping George, alone and helpless, somewhere out there. Even the tiniest chance to be close to him, Sophia would take it, no matter the cost. Willow was running at full speed. The soles of her feet had been cut open by shards of stone. But she had no time to stop or treat them. She just ran, pushed forward by Sophia's words. Her nerves were stretched too tight, her body was near its limit. So when she finally saw the flattened hotel ruins, Willow almost passed out on the spot. Chapter 26. The hotel was in a prime location, so rescue teams had already arrived and were searching through the rubble. Willow hadn't even caught her breath before she charged into the debris and began digging. Her fingers were quickly scraped raw by concrete, blood staining the ground, mixing with sweat and tears, only to be washed away by the rain. Someone shouted behind her. "Who are you? Why aren't you wearing rescue gear?" "Boss, I don't think she's with the rescue team." A stranger came over and grabbed her by the shoulder, but she didn't even turn around. Still digging frantically, the men snapped. "What do you think you're doing?" Willow shouted back. "Someone I love is down there. Let go of me." The men froze for a second. Then someone handed Willow a shovel. She had driven, ridden, and run nearly a full day to get here. She hadn't even had a sip of water. Now, she dug through the rubble non-stop until sunrise. Sleepless, exhausted, lightheaded. Finally, daylight broke. The rain stopped. Her hands were trembling violently. Palms blistered and bleeding. Then, she heard a familiar voice. "Willow." Like music from heaven. She turned around in a daze, and saw George, covered in dirt, holding a bundle of medical gauze, staring at her in shock. Her knees gave out, nearly collapsing onto the rebar. She murmured, "You're okay. Thank God you're okay," I said. "What are you doing here?" I could hardly believe my eyes. I rushed forward, cracked open a bottle of clean water and helped her drink. "Do you even realize how dangerous it is here?" She replied. "I came to find you." She clung tightly to my hand, her expression half smile, half tears. Then suddenly, she threw her arms around me. I was so scared. I had still been a little angry, but now, all that remained was soft concern. Willow looked absolutely spent. I patted her back and said, "Come with me. I've been over there in the rescue tent this whole time. Why were you digging over here?" Willow finally let go of the shovel, only then realizing the state of her palms. She winced from the pain. I brought her back to the tent. Inside, my advisor was sitting down with gauze wrapped around his forehead. The junior teammates had gone out to help with the search. I grabbed some disinfectant and gently rinsed her wounds. My face was still tense. My advisor looked at us and suddenly smiled. "Still claiming she's not your girlfriend?" I said. "Professor." I paused mid-movement and sighed. "You're in no condition to be joking." The advisor chuckled and waved Willow over to sit. He asked, "You came all the way from campus?" Willow nodded. "Yes." She finally got to rest, seeing the blood seeping through the gauze on the professor's forehead. She couldn't help but gasp, "Are you okay, Professor?" Chapter 27. "I'm fine," the professor said with a smile. Thankfully, it was right around dinner time. I'd taken George and the others downstairs to eat. We had just stepped out when the building collapsed. Willow listened, her heart pounding. She exhaled in relief. "That's so lucky," she said, then asked, "What about your forehead?" The professor waved it off casually. "I tripped and hit something. George already patched me up," I said. "Willow, let the professor get some rest. Come give me a hand." As soon as I called her over, she stood up immediately and said to the professor, "You take it easy. I'm young and healthy. I'll go help him." The professor smiled. "Good kid, go on." Then, this disaster had struck out of nowhere, though I'd called Willow over. I hadn't actually assigned her anything. Instead, I pulled over a simple but soft mat, patted her shoulder, and said gently, "You're not seriously hurt, so you shouldn't be sitting on the cold ground either. But you must be exhausted. Rest here for a while." Willow's heart softened. She took my hand and asked, "Are you hurt anywhere? Are you hungry? Tired?" "I'm fine," I said. "But your hands are a mess." 2 of her fingernails were torn up, and her palms were covered in blisters. I lowered my gaze, the concern in my eyes unmistakable, and carefully disinfected her hands again with iodine. I asked, "How did you know I was here?" I was genuinely curious. "I don't remember sending you my location." There was no signal in the city anymore. Willow's heart skipped a beat as she realized. The voice in her mind had been silent for a long time. She looked slightly uneasy. After a long pause, she said softly, "No matter what, you believed in me, didn't you?" I looked at her for a moment, then nodded. "I do. I believe in you." Hearing that, Willow's tense expression finally relaxed. She opened her mouth to say something, but then the ground shook again. Suddenly and violently, the bottles on the table rattled. Shouts erupted from outside. "Aftershock! Crouch down and cover your head. The tent won't collapse. There was no time to think. I yanked Willow into my arms and crouched down with her, just like the people had said. The tent's simple structure wouldn't cave in, but several support rods from above came crashing down against my back. I took the hit, stifling a groan of pain. Willow flinched in alarm and tried to pull away. But I held her tightly. I whispered, "It's okay, it doesn't hurt." Only once everything had settled did she look up at me, and saw the faint shimmer of tears in my eyes. She shouted, "Idiot. Let me see your back." I turned around obediently. There was just a large bruise where the rods had hit. Willow reached out, gently pressing her fingers to the bruise, and her tears welled up again. Chapter 28. Why do you even bother? Willow choked out the words. You're already hurt so badly. Why are you still helping me? I stared blankly for a second, then softly replied, "Yeah. I don't know either." Suddenly, something clicked in my mind. I wrapped my arms around her, tears soaking into her shirt. I said, "Willow, no matter what you're hiding from me, I'll forgive you." Host. A mechanical voice suddenly echoed in Willow's mind. Sophia said, "Your current affection score is at 87%. Willow let out a breath of relief. She turned and hugged me tightly. Pressing a soft kiss on my dust-covered cheek, she said, "All right, you rest now. Looks like most of the rescue teams have arrived." I gave a small hum in response, my eyes still watery, which Willow gently wiped clean with her hand. Willow asked the system, "Where were you just now?" For some reason, she felt the system's tone was downcast, recalling that long stretch of silence earlier. She hesitated and asked, "Do you guys run out of energy or something?" Sophia replied quietly, "That's one way to put it. Congratulations, Willow." When Sophia finally regained consciousness, the first thing she saw was George, holding Willow tightly in his arms. She felt jealous, hurt, but also genuinely happy for him. Willow truly loved George. He wouldn't be hurt anymore. Naturally, my competition was a wash. Once the roads reopened, our group returned to campus. The entire way back, Willow clung tightly to my hand, as if afraid I'd disappear again. I sighed. For the city we left behind, and for the contest I'd lost. My advisor patted me on the back, trying to comfort me. "There'll be bigger achievements ahead. Don't let this weigh on you." I nodded and said, "Take care of yourself, Professor." After we said goodbye, I got into Willow's car, looking out at the familiar streets. I felt like I'd returned from another lifetime, but the roads seemed different now. I turned to Willow and asked, "Where are we going?" Willow smiled. "I'm kidnapping you." I laughed. "Then go ahead and try." I pulled out my phone, and suddenly realized something. It was my birthday. I already had a hunch about where we were headed, but still, a flutter of surprise stirred in my chest. The spring breeze by the riverside rustled the green willows. I saw David, two of my roommates, a few classmates from my year, and even some of the younger students. They'd been waiting here for a while. Grinning, they all called out, "Happy birthday." I whipped my head toward Willow in shock. "We've been together the whole time. When did you plan all this?" She smiled. "Before we left." "Now get out of the car." It was already dusk. A few friends slowly approached, wheeling out a birthday cake. The candles showed my age, and just as I closed my eyes to make a wish, fireworks lit up the riverside sky. Chapter 29. I thought to myself, I've seen grander occasions and more luxurious birthday setups in mission worlds, yet none of them moved me like this moment. I opened my eyes and saw Willow standing before the fireworks. Her head lowered as she looked at me. Softly, Willow said, "Even though I've already told you how I feel, I still want to say it again. George, I like you." She held a bouquet of flowers, not pure white lilies. My eyes turned slightly red. I forced a smile and said, "What a cheesy confession, but I accept." As my words fell, mixed in with the cheers around us, came a lonely electronic voice. Sophia said, "Congratulations, host. Favorability has reached 90%. The strategy mission is complete." After finishing the cake and watching the fireworks, a few friends playfully pushed Willow into my arms. Giggling as they walked away, we strolled along the riverbank, watching as the city lights slowly came alive in the distance. I gently said, "You told me you had a secret. Can you tell me now?" Willow hesitated, unsure, but didn't want to hide it from me, though she knew I might not believe her. Telling me the truth was something she felt she had to do. She called out to Sophia several times in her mind, but there was no response. As we walked in silence, Willow wrapped her hand around mine. She said, "No matter what the secret is, you have to believe me." "I've never lied to you," I replied. "I know." I smiled faintly and said, "Willow, what you want to say? Is it about the mission?" Willow's eyes widened in disbelief as she looked at me. At the same time, in my mind, I heard Sophia's quiet, sorrowful voice. She said, "I should have told you earlier. George wouldn't not believe you, because he was once a mission executor too, and his mission target was me. Willow was too stunned to speak. From her expression, I knew I was right. Tilting my head slightly, I said to Willow, "You didn't just appear out of nowhere, so I'm guessing you didn't come to this world because of the mission. I think it was my car accident that triggered the strategy mission for you, wasn't it?" "Yes." Willow nodded. "How did you figure it out?" I said. "Because that was the moment your attitude changed completely. Back then, the system told me I had to pay a price. At first, I didn't know what that price was. Looking back now, I think it was becoming your mission target." My tone was incredibly calm, but it made Willow nervous instead. She tightened her grip on my hand, her voice slightly trembling as she said, "But I like you. Not because of any mission. It's because." The next second, I kissed her lips. Chapter 30. I said softly, "You don't need to explain anything to me. As long as the love is real, that's enough." I hated lies the most, but Willow had never once deceived me from beginning to end. She said she loved me, and that was real. That was already enough. Willow's eyes turned slightly red. Everything she had feared would follow never happened. George was fine, so fine it made her feel like she was still dreaming. Her mission was complete. From now on, there would no longer be a Damocles sword hanging over George's head. She could love him wholeheartedly. My eyes quietly gazed at her, then I smiled. Willow couldn't hold back anymore. She tilted her head up and offered her cheek. I lowered mine and kissed her lips. I tasted the salty bitterness of my own tears, but even more than that, her sweetness. When our emotions had finally settled, we sat down on a public bench. Willow heard the soft ticking of a countdown in her mind and asked in confusion, "What is this?" Sophia said calmly, "I'm leaving now. Thank you for completing this mission. I've done a lot of wrong to George in the past. In the end, I never truly made it up to him. Willow, I hope you can treat him well for a lifetime." She wasn't just leaving, she was dying. Ordinary systems, once their host completes a mission, can move on to the next world. They have the right to rest. But Sophia was different. She was never someone from this world. She wasn't even a real system. After overdrawing all her energy, even her soul would dissipate, never to exist in this world again. Before leaving, she looked at George one last time through Willow's eyes. She said to the main program, "I have only one last wish." The main program replied, "As long as it's not too much, I can grant it." Sophia murmured, "I want George to forget me, forget all the harm I ever brought him." This is already another world, isn't it? After a long silence, the program granted her request. Willow looked at me tentatively. She said, "My system actually had a name." She told me her name was. A sharp pain shot through her brain, as if something had completely disappeared. Willow softly said, "Sophia." No one responded. I frowned slightly. The name sounded vaguely familiar, but I couldn't quite remember anymore. I said, "It's not important." I brushed the dust off myself, interlocked my fingers with Willow's one by one, and smiled. "Let's go back to school." "Okay," I said. "I like you," Willow replied. "I like you too."